Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we've got a nice big 11-game Major League Baseball slate. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed the All-Star break. Won a lot of sports outside of a couple things in some of those days, so it's been a little bit of a week from a sports perspective, but we are back with baseball today. I do have a couple things to note before I really get into the slate. So one thing I'll say is I typically avoid batters who, for the first couple games back, who are in the home run derby because they tend to be a little bit over swinging when they get their first couple games back. But I still think that some of them have some upside today. With that said, though, we do have a pretty big slate here. It is 11 games. I do need to check the weather for the slate as well here, so let me do that 1 second. Pull this up. It looks like the St. Louis, Arizona has a little rain chance, and so does the San Francisco, Colorado game. But that's pretty much it, and it's not likely to be anything, so that's good at least. So we have a pretty good weather slate today. It should be a fun slate. I do think this slate is going to be pretty tough scoring wise because of there's a lot of good pitchers on the slate, and there's a lot of teams that really don't project all that well. In fact, more than half of the teams on the slate project under 4 runs, and that is pretty surprising for a big slate like this. So, but that's because there's a lot of good pitchers on the slate. There's probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 12 or 13 pitchers that have some upside on the slate. So, very crazy slate from that perspective. So let's go ahead and get into the pitchers. Um, so when we look at these pitchers, we'll just start at the top and kind of go down price range. So, well, and this will be GPP plays first. So Flaherty for Detroit. He does have a tougher matchup against Toronto, but he has been really good this season for the most part, and he should get around 20 fantasy points in this game. He's got a decent enough K rate that he should have that upside. Though he is the most expensive player on the slate, and he's not the best K rate guy, he definitely has some of the better potential on this one. And Toronto really doesn't project all that well. I mean, they project okay, but they don't project well in this one. Then we'll look at Corbin Burns for Baltimore against Texas. Now, Texas has been a team that we've targeted throughout the season some, as they haven't been nearly as good as we expected them to be. And Corbin has one of the best K rates on the slate. He also is a good matchup option here. So I think he's a viable play. I think he's going to be pretty much he's not going to be the most popular play on the slate because he's going to have lower ownership than I would expect. But I do think that he's a good play here, and he might be a good contrarian play from that perspective as well. And he's priced pretty fairly today. Garrett Cole for the Yankees does have an interesting matchup against Tampa Bay. Now his K rate has not been particularly perfect, but I think the projections for him are a little bit underutilizing his potential today against Tampa Bay, who has struggled at times. And I do think he's a very good option on the slate. He's probably one of the better options. In fact, he's going to have high ownership as well, just because I think there's going to be, just because he projects decently well, despite having a somewhat lower K rate than some of the other guys. But I think that's not even super accurate. The big risk here is if he can get into 6 or more innings, which he hasn't yet done since he's been back. Then we're going to look at Hunter Brown. Now, Hunter Brown has been pretty consistent lately. In fact, in 8 of the last 9 starts, he's been over 18 fantasy points. And he's had one good game and one bad game against Seattle this season. I think he's definitely capable here, but he does feel a little fool's gold, especially his price being a little bit cheaper also gives him some potential, and he should have a decent ownership. You could definitely utilize him as one of your top pitchers, but you could also consider fading him as kind of a strategy as well, because he does have that like risk to him. Luis Castillo for Seattle, he does have a tougher match against Houston, but I do think that he is a viable option today, and he's got a very similar K rate to Hunter Brown, and being virtually the same price. He's just been more inconsistent than Brown has been this season, but he does feel like a better pitcher in general. So I do think he's got some upside here. But I mean, you could stack both the pitchers from this game, being Castillo and Brown like that, and that can definitely be a strategy today. But both these guys, I really wanted to make somebody a good play on the slate, yeah, like a core play on the slate. But I definitely considered Hunter Brown and Castillo for that position. But overall, I couldn't. I just don't like anybody quite enough to do that. Michael Wacha for the Kansas City Royals. Now he has a great matchup against the White Sox, and he's been a guy that's been good against the below average teams this season. He's also limited every game, 8 of the last 9 games to 2 earned runs or less. Now, he hadn't had too many games where he had 0 earned runs, but he's not doing too bad here. I do think the White Sox could get 1 or 2 runs here, but if he can get enough strikeouts, which he is capable of, even though he doesn't have a lot of consistency there, he definitely has some potential today to be a decent play. I think a 15 fantasy point game, though, is probably what you're looking for here with him, and he's going to be a very contrarian play on the slate. Looking at Sean Manaea, now he might be the sneaky play of the day, as he does have that 15 fantasy point potential as well. But he's priced down a little bit more than some of the other guys. He's actually come down in price from the last few games, despite the fact that he's pitched pretty well. And he's going to be a pretty popular play because of that price point and his matchup against Miami. He's also got an okay K rate here. He's actually improved that recently, so that's helping him as well. So I think he's a good contrarian play, and it's really hard to not like him too much on the slate. I do have some extreme GPP plays for you, and I'm just going to list these out. Nathan Eovaldi for Texas, Tanner Bibby for Cleveland, Chris Bassett for Toronto, Spencer Schwellenbacher for Atlanta, and then I do have one Hail Mary play and JP Sears for Oakland, who surprisingly has done pretty good against the Angels this season already and has some potential as he's had a couple of good games in a row lately, but he has an extreme low point as well. So for those extreme GPP plays of Oldie, Bibby, Bassett, and Schwellenbacher, they're interesting plays, but I do think that they have high risk, high reward situations because they have tougher matchups and they're going against teams that project decently well today. But they do have good K rates, so that definitely gives them some potential. The top ownership at catcher today will be Garrett Cole, Hunter Brown, Luis Castillo, Sean Manaea, and Chris Bassett. And, that pretty much falls into what I think looks pretty solid today, though I do think Corbin Burnes is a good contrarian play as well. So with that said, let's go and get into our catchers here. Oops. Yo, what's up, Don? How you doing? So let's go ahead and get in our catchers here. So our top overall plays here will be Salvador Perez for Kansas City. Now he's got a pretty favorable matchup here. I think Kansas City is one of the better teams that aren't playing in Colorado today when it comes to fantasy potential, and he's been hitting the ball very well lately. I do like his upside here, and he's been good against the White Sox this season. Now he does have a little bit higher price than I like, but he's definitely in play here. Wilson Contreras for St. Louis is a good contrarian play today for St. Louis against Atlanta today. I think he's going to have some potential, though they aren't a team that looks all that great, but he does draw good fantasy point upside with that home run metrics. Looking at Hunter Goodman for the Rockies, being in Colorado helps. And if you look at his stats, he's had 7 home runs at home and 0 on the road. He definitely has that home run potential today, but he's high risk, high reward. Danny Jansen is a good contrarian play as a high risk, high reward play as well with some home run upside, but his team does not have the best of matchups on the slate going up against Flaherty today. Then we're going to look at first base. The top ownership at the catching position will be Patrick Bailey, Francisco Alvarez, and then low ownership, Cal Raleigh and Wilson Contreras. So do keep that in mind. Looking at first base, Ohtani obviously going to be somebody that really jumps off the page a lot today. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He also hit a home run in the All-Star game. I look for him to come out trying to hit home runs again, continue that, and he definitely has that upside today, but he is super expensive as usual. If we want to get a little bit cheaper, though, Lamont Wade Jr. for for San Francisco, he is a guy that I think is kind of a core play. Even though he's not a home run hitter, he's done very well against Colorado this season, and he has that nice home run potential at this in the stadium, which is definitely unique for him in this particular situation. I think he's a good play today, and he should be well rested and back and be ready to hit the ball well. But I think he can get a multi-hit game here pretty easily on this slate. Ben Rice looks very interesting for the Yankees. He has been absolutely phenomenal in certain situations, and the situation today isn't perfect, but he does have home run potential today, and he can score a big amount of fantasy points for a decent price as a good contrarian play here. Vlad Jr. and Josh Naylor are both expensive options that you could utilize if you have money left over and you want to pay out more than you want to pay for Wade. but don't want to use Ohtani. So the top ownership here: Seth Brown, Lamont Wade Jr., and Vinny Pasquantino. Low owned upsides: J.D. Martinez and Alec Burleson. Looking at second base, Dario Estrada. Now he's another guy from San Francisco that does draw good metrics today, though he has struggled lately. So he's somebody I don't think is a must play by any stretch, even though he has done well against Colorado this season. I think he has some potential here, but I also like, oops, messed something up. I also like Brendan uh, Rogers here. See, for Colorado. He's probably my favorite play on Colorado outside of catcher here. So I think he does draw some good home run potential today, despite the fact that he struggled most of the season. He does play better at home, and this is a good situation for him. Alex Bregman is kind of a contrarian play. I don't love him, but I think he's a viable option today if you want to go cheap here. Though Houston does look like they're going to have a rough matchup. He's kind of a guy that I think has that home run potential late in the game, more so than just during the middle of the game. Looking at the top ownership here: Brandon Drury, Brendan Rodgers, Keaston Hierra, and Michael Massey. Low owned upside: David Hamilton and Jorge Polanco. Looking at third base, uh, Jose Ramirez and Rafael Devers both have absolutely crazy home run metrics today. They're both in play, though this position is not cheap today. It seems like that the best options are pretty expensive. Matt Chapman also does jump in here as a really solid play. He's also been phenomenal against the Colorado Rockies this season. I really wanted to make him a core play, but he's just a little bit more expensive than I'd like to utilize here. But you could definitely swap out any of the guys that I've mentioned already, or that I have listed here, and put you could put Chapman in here for third base, and then pay for different guys in the outfield if you wanted. That's definitely a strategy you can go today to help you with the price points here. But and how you want to stack that up. I think that he's definitely somebody you can consider from that perspective. But the other guys I like at this position, top ownership at least: Adam Frazier, Matt Chapman, Brandon Drury, Raymond Urias, and Anthony Rendon. And then for low-owned upsides, Devers and Dylan Moore come into mind. Looking at shortstops, Bobby Witt Jr. does have that nice home run potential today. He has been ups and down a little bit lately, but he definitely has some good potential coming off the break. Gunnar Henderson has really good metrics for the slate, despite the fact that he doesn't project all that well. His metrics are really good, though, so it's a very strange situation for him, but I do think he does draw home run potential. And then Tovair. Tovair looks really good today for the Rockies. He definitely draws some good home run potential today. He's been hitting the ball pretty well lately, and he's become one of the better options on the team as a whole. And so I do like his potential here. Looking into the top ownership, though, Francisco Lindor and Tovair, and then David Hamilton, J.P. Crawford, and Mason Wynn are the low-owned upside options. Looking at looking at outfielders, Ohtani, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez, and Jarren Duran are all the expensive options here. I don't think you really need to pay up at this position because there's so many good options that are mid-priced and even cheap on this slate. Michael Conforto and Yaz, both for San Francisco, look absolutely phenomenal today. They've been pretty good against Colorado this season, and they definitely draw home run potential in this game, despite the fact that neither one of them are huge home run hitters. But Colorado just looks phenomenal for the slate, even though this matchup is just great for them overall. Though for stacking purposes, you definitely want to stack up San Francisco, but for contrarian options, you definitely don't want to utilize them, to be contrarian in big GPPs. Lars Nootbaar for St. Louis is a one-off that does project really well today. He is a little bit high risk, high reward here. He's not a huge home run threat, but he does have some good potential on the slate. I also like Abreu for Boston. He's probably one of my favorite outfielders that isn't in the Colorado game that has a lot of upside, and he's had some inconsistencies this season, but he definitely draws good metrics on this slate. Josh Lowe for Tampa Bay and Sean Beauchard for Colorado also are utilized here, but they're high risk, high reward. A couple other guys that I do like here, though: Hunter Goodman, who I already mentioned at catcher. He can fit in here in the outfield as well. George Springer for Toronto looks very interesting today, though he is a high risk, high reward play with some home run upside. He just hasn't hit the ball very well this season. Brendan Donovan and Dalton Varsho also have some utility on the slate, but again, they have struggled to hit the ball very well. Looking at the top ownerships in the outfield, Jorge Soler, Adam Frazier, Seth Brown, Michael Conforto, and Taylor Ward, Lawrence Butler, Brandon Nemo, Mike Yastrzemski, Winsel Perez, and Hunter Renfroe. The low-owned upside options, Sean Bochard, JJ Leday, Julio Rodriguez, and Luke Rayleigh. So with that said,